I'm John, and you're watching the Real Man Rom-Com Review. And in this video, I'm going to give you my review of the top 3 Hallmark Great American Family Christmas movies for the weekend of December 2nd through the 4th of 2022. Number 3 this week was A Big Fat Family Christmas, which aired Friday, the 2nd of December on the Hallmark Channel. Now, Liv Rose, a.k.a. Liv Rose Chang, is a photographer for the San Francisco Chronicle. She posts a lot of pictures on social media and that kind of thing, and Liv's family are Christmas junkies. I mean, this is the 25th anniversary of the Chang-tastic Christmas party. Now, at her office, her editor, Charles, introduces Liv to Henry, the guy that she's been scoping out at the office. And, well, he's a new writer, and he's from the Bangkok Post. And Charles assigns Henry and Liv to cover, guess what? The Chang-tastic Christmas party. So Liv takes Henry to visit Mrs. Lin, who provides decorations for the party, and Liv speaks to her in Cantonese and trying to keep the truth from her that she's actually a Chang from Henry. And, well, old Henry, he's no fool. He knows a little Cantonese, and he's figured out that Liv is actually a member of the Chang family. Now, Henry wants to go visit the Changs, so Liv calls her brother Andrew and tells him to get Mom and Dad out of the house. So Liv and Henry go on a boat ride, and they go through the bay, and they end up going to visit the Changs, of course, who are not home. So he walks her home, and when Liv gets home, she finds that Andrew and her parents are at her house decorating her place. And guess what? Henry walks in. Liv is busted. So the next day, Henry and Liv go and actually visit their parents, and where they talk, and they end up making sweet potato dumplings together for the upcoming Chang-tastic Christmas party. Now, Henry gets to see photos of their previous parties that involved Liv and Andrew and everybody else. So Liv and Henry, they offered to take invitations to the party to the people in town. They walk and hand deliver them. And the people will RSVP and provide donations, which are used to support a community center. And this was all Liv's idea. Now they go, as they're out, they go and visit the old St. Mary's Cathedral, which is the oldest cathedral in California. And they end up having a thing, and they end up lighting prayer candles there. Now, I gotta say that this was a really touching scene and a great example of how you can incorporate faith into a Christmas movie without it being forced down your gullet like CCB did in A Christmas Present. And Liv and Henry now, they go out for drinks, and when he walks her home, they almost kiss under the mistletoe. But Charles ends up reading Henry's story and tells him it's good, but it's missing something. It's missing the heart of the story. And while Henry knows that Liv is the heart of the story because of all the things that she's done over the years to make the party better and all of that, but Liv doesn't want to be a part of this story. She doesn't want to be involved as being a Chang or part of the Chang-tastic Christmas. It's really kind of confusing. So anyway, the next day, Liv and Henry go to pick up the donations from the invitees, and Henry has never ridden a cable car, so they decide, hey, it's nothing like the present, and they go hanging off the side of the car and doing all that like Jack and Rose in Titanic, and of course that gets them tossed off the cable car. Well, unfortunately, they can't find the bag that contains all the money. Oh boy, uh-oh, Shaggy, right? Anyway, so Liv confesses that what happens to her parents, and they end up arguing, and Liv reveals that, look, she feels like the party is an embarrassment to her, and Liv's mom, who's hurt, tells her that they will cover for her mistake, and Liv should just not bother showing up to the party. Now, Henry ends up interviewing Liz's parents about the party, and the parents talk about how important Liz has been to the party and the family, and Liz ends up seeing the video and ends up apologizing to Henry, and things seem to be doing okay. And Well, Liz ends up revealing that as a kid, she was bullied by her friends when she was younger, and so that's what made her become ashamed of herself and her heritage of being Oriental, and that. So, anyway, Liz ends up doing this live stream while she tells her backstory about what happened to her, as well as what happened on the cable car the other day, and she asks her followers to please donate and replace the money that was lost. All right, so we get to the party, and Liv's parents start to confess that they lost the money when Liv arrives and interrupts and tells everyone that she actually lost this money. And while she's telling the story about how her friends and followers helped donate to bail her out, a young girl ends up arriving with the bag that Liv lost on the cable car. So now the community center will not just have the donations that were in the bag, but also the stuff from Liv's friends, and they're going to have twice the donations that year. Now, Liv, who's now proud of who she is and her heritage, ends up singing "Oh Holy Night" in Cantonese as she did as a kid, and Liv and Henry kissy kissy, sweet potato dumplings for all. This was a movie I really wasn't really sure about when the previews came out, but I did enjoy watching it. And being set in San Francisco, we don't really get the cold weather and the snow and the hot cocoa or any of those other real kind of traditional Christmas things. But but what it does have actually does work. And I mean, the scenes in that cathedral really kind of spoke to me. I mean, the reverence they showed the place reminds me of how I felt walking into the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris on my honeymoon. Now, I have to say, I was a little kind of disappointed with the whole woke storyline about Liv being bullied and being ashamed of herself and, all this other stuff. But I mean, hey, this is the new Hallmark, and with some of the attacks and things that we've seen on Asian people that's been going on in the world right now, I guess it fits. It has its place, whatever. But I just really didn't need that as part of this story. There was a better way to go about doing it than saying that she was embarrassed of herself. Look, I get off my soapbox now, but the movie did have some things I had some issues with as well. I mean, good God, the decorations at Liv's parents' house. I mean, who puts bows on fridge doors and cabinet knobs? But hey, go big or go home, right? Okay. Anyway, now losing the bag on the cable car. Look, you guys had one job. How do you lose something that important? Okay, now the people that returned the bag. I mean, look, the kid brought a bag back, and you don't offer the kid a reward or anything like that. You just take the bag and woohoo! I mean, that's not setting the good example here. And lastly, look, sweet potato dumplings? Ugh, gross. I mean, look, just give me some steamed pork dumplings and spring rolls, and I'll thank you very much. My number 2 movie this week was B&B Merry, which aired Sunday, the 4th of December on Great American Family. Now, Tracy Wise is a travel blogger for her own group, Wise Travel. Now, Tracy's boyfriend, Mark, who's in mergers and acquisitions, and Tracy have been dating for about a year, but because of their busy travel schedules, they've really only spent a few weeks together. Now, Graham and his mother, they run the Silver Peak B&B in Vermont. Hoping to get some good publicity for their B&B, they invite Tracy and her boyfriend Mark to come to the inn for a romantic getaway. Now, Tracy ends up getting a call from a guy named Sam Phillips of Lux Voyage magazine. And he wants Tracy to write a story for the magazine as a tryout for a new position that he has open. Now, one of the properties he is given a choice to... she's given her a... I'm sorry. One of the properties she is given a choice to review is the new Silver Peak Hotel located in the same city as the B&B. Perfect, so she can review the hotel, then pop over to the B&B for her romantic getaway with Mark. Nothing can go wrong with this plan, right? Right. Anyway, so arriving in Silver Peak, Tracy pops over to the local diner where she proceeds to spill a milkshake all over Graham. Now, Graham thinks that she has arrived early for her trip and doesn't have her boyfriend and he notices that she doesn't have her boyfriend in tow. And, well, that's because Mark has to go back to Paris and his new love, Chloe. But Tracy hasn't quite figured that second part out yet. Now, at the B&B, they go all out to welcome her and they even bake cookies together. I mean, they just show up, start baking some cookies. Yay! Yeah, anyway, so Tracy and Graham end up going to the Christmas fair where we discover that there used to be a big dance in town, but the building burned down and the town is given money for the Silver Peak. The town gave money out of their funds or whatever to build the Silver Peak Hotel, so they couldn't rebuild the place where they held the dance, and it was canceled. Now, did anybody actually think to maybe ask the hotel if they had a ballroom or something where they could have this dance? Anyway, so they've decided now they're going to have this dance at the B&B. It's going to be a way to promote the B&B. Now, they get back to the B&B, and Mom's been doing a little social media snooping and she found a photo of Mark in Paris with Chloe. Now, she ends up showing it to Tracy, who confesses that she and Mark did actually break up by phone as she was standing on the front porch when she arrived at the B&B. Now, Sam calls, and he wants this story on the hotel next week, and Tracy's been posting photos of her time at the B&B, and that's helped the B&B business, but she hasn't gotten her story done. So, Graham reveals to Tracy that when his dad died, that he gave up his dream of becoming a photographer to help his mom run the B&B. And despite the walls that Graham has built around himself after a bad breakup, everyone can see a difference in Graham since Tracy has arrived and they're all pleased. Well, eventually Sam calls again, this time wanting to know why Tracy is posting so much about the B&B when he is footing the bill for her to be at the hotel. Now, that seems like a reasonable request to me, right? If the guy's footing the bill, you ought to be there and be, doing it, but she's been hanging out at the B&B. So Tracy ends up leaving the B&B and goes and checks into the hotel. And when she gets there, she sees that she's got a modern, sleek, and neat room, but it doesn't have the warmth that the B&B had. Now, Tracy ends up writing the review of her hotel, and everyone in the town, how they read the first few paragraphs of her review, which seem to be very favorable about the hotel. And they're all shocked because they thought that she was having such a great time at the B&B and with Graham and all the other stuff. Well, Sam calls again, and this time Sam is furious. Seems that she wrote a very disparaging review of the hotel, and that hotel is owned by the same company that owns the magazine where Sam works. Well, that bonehead didn't bother to tell Tracy that, this was the case. So Graham ends up finding Tracy, and he has read the rest of the review, which says that the B&B is a better place to visit. Graham tells Tracy that he wants to go where she wants to go, so on and so forth, kissy kissy. Look, after the debacle that was Thanksgiving weekend, Great American Family redeemed itself with this movie. I mean, B&B Merry is the epitome of following the Christmas movie formula to the letter, and it didn't disappoint. Now, I was really torn about whether this was going to be my number 1 or number 2 movie this week, and it just eked out because of the way that the story of the other movie was done. Now, Jen Lilly, who we've affectionately called Bambi because of her big, beautiful, doughy eyes, does a super job in this movie. And I have to admit that the older and bearded version of Jesse Hutch is pretty damn hot compared to his similar role in one of my all-time favorites, Let It Snow. Now, Jesse's one of these softer-spoken leading men in these types of movies, but he can actually show a little emotion and has some acting skills compared to others, which I'll talk about in my next review. I hope that Great American Family takes a hard look at this movie, A Merry Christmas Wish, and Destined at Christmas in comparison to the garbage that A Christmas Present, Christmas Lovers Anonymous, and Christmas Sweetheart were, as the direction that they need to go in the future if they want to compete with the likes of Hallmark, Lifetime, and the slew of other Christmas movies that have come out this year. My number one movie this week was A Fabled Holiday, which aired Saturday, the 3rd of December on the Hallmark Channel. A movie opens up with a narrator, and I immediately get that Christmas and Evergreen vibe. And we see that this dad is reading a story about a fictional town of Wonderbrook to his daughter, Talia. And her friend Anderson ends up coming over, and they read the book together. And we flash forward a little bit to 3 months later, and Dad, who was sick, has died, and Talia is moving away. So Anderson gives Talia a journal to write her stories in, and Talia gives Anderson a copy of the Christmas book that they read together. We move to current day, and we see that Talia owns a bookstore. She's been unable to get her stories published. And Anderson is now a surgeon who's going through some sort of crisis, and he needs to take a leave of absence for work. Now, Anderson runs into Talia at the bookstore where they promise to catch up with each other after the holidays. Now, Talia's having a hard time to find someone to spend Christmas with, and she ends up accidentally calling this place called the Gingerbread Inn by accident. And they say, hey, I've only got 2 rooms left. Would you like one? She says no. She calls another friend. Nothing. So she ends up calling them back and books a room. Now, Anderson, who needed to get out of town, ends up getting lost in the snow, and he drives by a sign for the town of Wonderbrook. And so we see that Talia has arrived at the inn. And when she gets there, she just looks around. She's got this feeling of deja vu. She can't figure out what's going on. It's something just seems familiar about this place. Now, Anderson, who's gotten lost and now having car trouble, he ends up at the inn. So now there's other guests at the inn who are Diane and Keith, and they're having marital issues, and Charles, who's alone after losing his wife, Bee. Now, the inn is run by Judy and Miles is also the mayor of the town, and they have a daughter, Izzy, and Izzy takes them on a tour of the place and tells them that this is the start of Wonder Week. And this rings a bell with Talia, but she can't quite place where she knows all this from. Now, at the local bar and grill, that's owned by this grinchy old lady named Mildred, who is not at all happy to have these folks in town. And Charles goes there to eat, and they have a little back and forth before lunch, and you get that feeling that there might be something going on here. Well, anyway, everybody goes to the tree lighting that evening, and Talia says it would be perfect if it was snowing. And we look in the background, and Judy blows into her hand, and voila, it starts snowing. This town has got some pretty cool magic going on here. So the next day, Diane and Charles argue with each other at the hot cocoa tasting event, and Diane feels that Charles tunes her out, and Charles feels like he isn't respected by Diane. And we kind of find out that Diane has filed divorce papers but hasn't served them, and this trip was supposed to be their last chance to find love, and things just aren't going well. Well, they all get together for story time at the fire pit, and whoever has the candy cane gets to add to the story that they're all creating together. Well, grinchy old Mildred ends up giving Anderson his keys back and telling him that the road is open, and Judy is not happy with Mildred for doing this. Well, so Anderson, though, he decides to stay in town a little bit longer, and he tells Talia that he's lost confidence after losing a patient, and he isn't sure that this is what he should be doing any longer. Well, Charles is cajoled into playing Santa Claus, and Mildred comes around and starts fussing over Charles's beard, and when you look at it, you just know that there's something happening there between Mildred and Charles. Well, at the fire that evening, Talia figures out that everyone who's staying at the inn has a copy of that Christmas book that she read as a kid. And when she confronts Judy about it, Judy just plays it off as a coincidence. Now, the next day, everyone, including Charles, they all get together and they start making stockings. Now, Keith ends up asking Diane out on a date for after they leave the inn. And they go up to their room, they spend some time having a real conversation, and they agree to work out their differences with each other. Now, meanwhile, Mildred, whose heart we thought was thawing out, ends up spewing some viciousness at Talia, who's been writing a new story based on Izzy. Mildred scoffs at her and tells her that she has little to no chance to make it as a writer. I mean, this lady is worse than the Grinch. Of course, now Diane and Keith, they've patched things up and they've decided they're going to leave. And when they say that, this bell goes off, which seems really odd. But they end up leaving. Now, Charles asks Judy for some decorations, and he takes them over to Mildred's grill and bar. And Mildred, well, she relents to allowing him to decorate. And Charles ends up giving her the stocking that he made at the stocking thing in the morning that he made for Mildred. Now, Mildred's icy heart melts again. I mean, what's up with this lady? I mean, one minute she's this horrible thing, the next minute she's nice as hell. I don't get it. So at the dance that night, wicked old Mildred is back spewing more hate at Talia. And Talia, having enough, retaliates at Mildred, and she ends up telling everyone Anderson's secret about losing a patient. Oops, that's a bonehead move. Well, Anderson decides then and there it is time to go. Now, the next day, as Anderson is leaving, we see that Charles ends up having a heart attack, and Anderson finds Charles, and he ends up saving him. And when he does, we hear another bell ring. Well, Miles and Judy tell him the truth about Wonderbrook to Anderson, and Anderson wants to tell Ty, but nope, can't do it. He has to keep it a secret. So Mildred ends up bringing Charles a gift. A thoroughly confused Charles at this point wants to know why Mildred is so hot and cold all the time. Mildred says she cannot tell him, but he needs to trust her. And after what I've seen from Mildred, look, I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her. But hey, that's how it goes. Now, it's the Night of Wonder, and Talia sees Anderson, and she tells him, look, she's done with all this idea of this place being magical or having this whatever, and there's something weird and something special. And Anderson ends up giving Talia a bunch of stories that he had with her that she wrote as a kid. Now, well, look, how does he have this with him? I mean, how does he magically comes up with this? This is what I'm asking at this point in the movie. Well, immediately afterwards, we get our answer. He says that he found him while he was packing. Okay, but why would you have taken them with you? It's not like you knew you were going to see this girl, so I don't understand it. Anyway, so Talia ends up declaring, look, I am a writer, and I am woman, and I am strong, and hear me roar, and I am no longer going to be fearful. And she hears the bells ring. Well, Talia is then told the truth about Wonderbrook, and we find out that Miles is the king from the story, and Judy's the fairy queen, Izzy's the princess, and Mildred is the witch, and Jake, who I didn't even talk about in this review, is the fool. We find out that Charles wants to stay in Wonderbrook to be with Mildred. Now, they end up accepting him, but they're not sure how much longer that the magic of Wonderbrook is going to last because, well, the people, they don't read the book any longer. So, Talia and Anderson end up declaring their love to each other, and they kiss. And 1 year later, the narrator of the story reveals that he was the actual original author of the Wonderbrook Christmas story, and Talia is now has written a sequel to this, and she has created a new character, the Noble Knight. She gives a copy to a boy who's at the store, and he hears the bell ring. Look, what a fun movie this was. I mean, similar to Christmas and Evergreen, each segment was a chapter in the story, and I really liked the way the movie was presented. I mean, each of the Wonderbrook characters played their role to perfection. King Miles was wise in his counsel of Keith about his relationship. The fairy queen used her magic to make it snow, and Mildred was spectacular as the evil witch. I mean, when she spewed at Talia towards the end of the movie, I was shocked. I mean, this was not your typical Hallmark hatred that we've seen in other movies. This is it was something different, and it was refreshing to see. Now, the secondary story of Keith and Diane, it was really kind of boring, and it really didn't fit in, and I really didn't care, and we didn't need it. But the story of Charles was really fun, and it was important because it was what she used to create the Noble Knight in her new book. Now, Brooke d'Orsay, who forever in my mind will always be Miss Christmas, was at her usual bubbly and joyful self. Now, as for Ryan Peavy, look, he's a good-looking man with that deep, bassy voice that probably makes the girls weak in the knees. but this role was pretty flat for him. And after seeing him in A Timeless Christmas and Christmas at the Plaza, both movies that I really like, by the way, I'm just kind of starting to wonder if he can actually do something other than just smolder on screen. I'd like to see him be a little more cocky and zany like Wes Brown was in Haul Out the Holly for once. And poor Lindsay Sterling. I mean, she was promoted in the commercials, and I was excited to see her, but her time in the movie was about as long as it was in the commercial. I mean, what a wasted opportunity for her. Look, if these reviews make you want to feel the magic of Christmas, then please give me a thumbs up. And if you want to hear my reviews of other Hallmark and Great American Family movies or other rom-coms in the future, please subscribe to the channel and ring this bell. Hey, I'm John, and you've been watching The Real Man Rom-Com Review.